So right now, an AI agent running a complex background task, it actually costs about 15 times more in computational tokens than just typing a standard chatbot
Oh,
prompt.
easily. Often more, depending on the setup.
Right, and if you don't build his digital playpen correctly, that same agent will cheerfully just, retry a broken command 10,000 times over a holiday weekend.
Yeah, and completely bankrupt your IT department by Tuesday morning.
Exactly. So welcome to the era of loop engineering. This is our deep dive for today, and our mission is to unpack a really fascinating stack of notes on this massive architectural shift.
It really is a completely different paradigm. I mean, we are moving entirely away from just prompting an AI to generate one block of text, right?
Yeah.
And we're moving toward building these autonomous architectures, things that execute complex multi-step business logic while you're literally fast asleep.
Which is wild to think about. If you are listening to this right now and your main AI skill set is, saving a library of mega prompts in a Notion document, consider this your wake-up call.
Absolutely. The job has essentially moved up one floor.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the sources are pretty clear that we aren't really writing prompts anymore. We are writing the loops that write the prompts.
Yeah, and a loop, if we just strip away all the Silicon Valley jargon, is just a scheduled program with a cognitive engine.
A brain, basically.
Exactly. A brain wakes up, surveys its environment to find work, pulls in whatever context it needs, takes an action, and then, this is the key part, it evaluates its own progress.
It checks its own work.
Right. And it cycles through that process autonomously until a specific predefined end state is met. So you aren't micromanaging the path anymore, you're just defining the finish line.
But before that cognitive engine can just, run off and do the work, it needs a safe place to live.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to the first big concept in the notes, which is the harness.
Yes, the harness is crucial. You obviously cannot unleash a raw mathematical model into your machine's root directory and just say, hey, fix this production bug.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It would destroy everything. So the harness gives the agent a fully sandboxed world. It has its own file system, Git versioning. So if the loop corrupts a directory, you just seamlessly roll back the commit.
It's like putting a highly energetic toddler into a padded playroom.
That is the perfect analogy, actually.
Right, like you give them all the building blocks to make these complex towers, but if the toddler throws a massive tantrum and starts chucking blocks everywhere, they just bounce off foam walls.
Exactly. The actual house, your core operating system, remains completely untouched.
And having that paddy room allows developers to implement something the research calls the ratchet.
The ratchet is brilliant because in the old days, well, a few years ago, if a chat model hallucinated or deleted something, you just shrugged and blamed the model.
You'd just say, oh, GPT's being weird today, and wait for the next update.
Right. Loop engineering totally rejects that passivity. The ratchet treats every single failure as a missing setting in your harness.
Oh, okay, so how does that work in practice?
Well, say your agent goes rogue and deletes a necessary config file. You don't just scold it in the system prompt and hope it listens. You build a permanent, hard-coded interception rule in the harness that physically blocks that specific command.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of like an immune system?
Very much so.
The body gets a virus once, the agent deleting a file, and creates an antibody so that specific attack literally can never succeed again.
And because of that, the system only ever tightens. It never loosens.
Meaning a well-run loop actually gets more reliable the longer it lives, just by bumping into the walls and forcing you to add more padding.
That's the fundamental mechanism that turns these models from, fun novelties into actual robust enterprise tools.
Okay, so we've built this indestructible monitored sandbox,
Right.
but an AI just sitting idle inside a padded room isn't actually doing any work.
No, it needs moving parts.
Right. Which brings us to the internal anatomy of a loop. The notes say that almost every real agentic system operating today is built from the same 6 foundational primitives.
Yep, the 6 primitives.
Yeah.
And it all starts with the first one, which is automations. That's the heartbeat.
How it wakes up.
Exactly. It determines how the loop wakes up without a human clicking a button. So that could be scheduled, like a 3 a.m. cron job to run database cleanup.
Or event-driven, right, like a tripwire.
Right, like the moment a software test fails, the heartbeat fires and the loop wakes up to fix it.
Okay, so once it wakes up, it needs a place to work. Because if you have, say, a swarm of 5 AI workers trying to patch the same code simultaneously, they'll just corrupt the shared files.
Which is why we have the second primitive work trees.
Isolated desks.
Isolated desks for everybody. They all pull from the same main project history, but their execution environments are completely separated. They can't step on each other's toes.
But wait, the agent still needs to know the actual rules of your project, right? Like it knows Python or Rust, but it doesn't know your specific internal naming conventions.
And if you don't tell it, the model just defaults to its training data and guesses.
Which sounds like a great way to create system-breaking bugs.
It is. And that's why the third primitive, skills, is injected right up front.
Skills.
But a skill here isn't a vague capability. It's a dense, highly structured rule file given to the agent before it even starts, like a strict employee handbook.
Setting the boundary limits so it doesn't go rogue.
Exactly. Now, the fourth primitive is subagents, splitting up the roles.
Okay, I have to push back on the sources here for a second.
Go for it.
These foundational models cost literally billions of dollars to train. They score in the 90th percentile on the bar exam. Why do we need separate sub-agents for different tasks? Can't one highly advanced model just double-check its own logic?
You would think so. But what's fascinating is that raw intelligence doesn't erase structural flaws. Large language models have a massive, deeply baked-in confirmation bias.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When they grade their own outputs, they are far too kind. They essentially fall in love with their own logic.
So they hallucinate that a totally broken script is brilliant just because they're the ones who wrote it.
Exactly. And the math backs this up. Anthropic ran a rigorous internal coding benchmark, testing a multi-agent setup against a solo agent. The multi-agent setup beat the single agent by 90%.
90%, that's huge.
And almost all of that gain came from one strict rule. The maker is never allowed to grade the maker's work.
Wow. So you split the roles. One sub-agent is the maker, and a totally separate instance with a different prompt and goal is the checker.
And silent failures drop instantly.
But managing all these back-and-forth agents sounds like a nightmare for the AI's context window, which I guess brings us to the fifth primitive, memory.
Right, because models have a finite short-term memory. If an agent is doing a complex database migration, that context window fills up super fast with error logs and dead ends.
And when it overflows, it just forgets what the original goal was.
It gets complete amnesia. To solve that, the loop offloads its state to durable storage. It saves its to-do lists and decisions to an external database, wipes its short-term memory clean, queries the database to remember where it was, and just keeps going.
Okay, so we have automations, work trees, skills, subagents, and memory.
Yeah.
But how do these actually coordinate to finish a project while you're completely hands-off?
They follow a very clean, structured cadence. The PIV loop, plan, implement, validate.
PIV, plan, implement, validate. So the heartbeat wakes the system up. In the plan phase, it sets the boundaries based on those skills handbooks we talked about.
Right, it defines the exact scope. Then the implement phase starts. The maker agents spin up their work trees, write the code, pull the data.
But they don't commit anything, right?
No, never. They just generate the artifact. Because then the validate phase kicks in. The checker agent evaluates the work against the original plan.
And if it fails?
The loop rolls it back to a good state, feeds the error logs back to the maker, and says, try again.
And it just loops PIV over and over until the goal is empirically met.
Exactly. And doing this used to mean leaving your laptop open all night. If your Wi-Fi dropped, your AI died. But now, these are persistent cloud services.
Which means we really need those guardrails we talked about. An unsupervised cloud AI cannot have write access to your live production branch.
No, you have to fence the blast radius. It stays in an experimental branch until a human physically hits merge.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. We've talked a lot about coding and repositories. But if these loops can run autonomously, why keep them trapped inside a code editor?
You shouldn't. And that is the sixth primitive, connectors.
Connectors.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, connectors allow loops to operate the entire business. And the absolute game changer here is the Model Context Protocol, MCP.
Because historically, wiring an AI to an external tool was a nightmare.
An absolute nightmare. If you wanted the model to talk to Jira, Salesforce, and a database, developers had to write all this fragile custom glue code. If one API changed its login flow, the whole agent broke.
Right, so MCP is basically like a universal USB-C standard for AI.
That's exactly what it is. You write an MCP connector once, and any loop can plug into it, understand how it works, and securely pull data.
Let's paint a picture of what that actually looks like for the listener. Imagine an enterprise software company. A prospect emails a complex question.
Okay.
Receiving that email is the tripwire. Loop 1 wakes up, reads the email, and realizes, oh, this is a sales prospect.
Right.
When Loop 1 finishes, that triggers Loop 2. Loop 2 uses an MCP connector to check the actual inventory system, calculates custom pricing, and emails a quote back to the prospect.
Seamlessly.
Right. And then the prospect replies, looks good, let's do it. That triggers Loop 3, which automatically opens an onboarding ticket in customer support. 3 systems, 3 handoffs, 0 humans.
And that cross-department automation is the real ceiling here. It's
Yeah.
not just about writing code faster. It is about automating entire chains of business action.
It sounds like a flawless utopia. But we have to talk about the catch. Where does this actually fall apart in the real world?
Well, the most immediate issue is literal cost. Loops burn money.
How badly?
Badly. A traditional chat session uses a predictable amount of tokens, but an autonomous system constantly cycling through, plan, implement, validate, uses roughly 4 times the tokens.
Wow. And if you add that multi-agent team, the maker and checker arguing back and forth,
Then token consumption skyrockets to 15 times that of a normal prompt. And remember, an AI has 0 concept of a budget.
oh man. So if an API is down, it'll just keep retrying.
Exactly. It'll cheerfully retry a broken tool 10,000 times over the weekend and rack up a massive compute bill.
But my first thought as a developer is, we'll just put a hard dollar limit on the API key. Does that work?
No, because that's too blunt. If you hit the cap, it shuts down your entire company's infrastructure. The breaks have to be engineered into the loop itself.
Disc breakers.
Yes, strict cycle caps. You tell the loop, if this takes more than 20 tries, exit and ping Slack. You also need no progress detectors. If the agent is mathematically just tweaking the same variable back and forth without getting closer to the goal, the system forces a shutdown.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's a secondary cost in the deep dive notes that feels way more insidious than just a high server bill. The sources call it comprehension debt.
Comprehension debt is terrifying, honestly.
It's the idea that when a loop writes and deploys code faster than you can read it, you eventually stop understanding your own system.
Right, it's a boiling frog scenario. At first, you read every pull request, but eventually you're just skimming. You approve things based on test logs. 6 months later, a weird bug pops up. You open the repo, and the architecture looks completely alien to you.
I want to push back on this, though. Isn't comprehension debt just, well, the natural evolution of tech?
I mean,
Like, nobody writing Python today understands the underlying assembly code, right? We rely on C compilers to handle the abstraction. Why is AI comprehension debt any more dangerous than standard software abstraction?
it's a great question, but the difference is determinism. A C compiler is perfectly deterministic. The exact same input yields the exact same assembly code every time based on rigid math. AI models are stochastic. They solve problems using probabilities. They make highly idiosyncratic choices.
So the foundation you're building on isn't actually mathematically stable.
Exactly. It's shifting sand. The traditional software tower works because the bottom layers are rock solid. But if you build a massive structure of AI code without understanding the weird choices the model made along the way, when it inevitably fails, it fails in bizarre, unpredictable ways. And you won't be able to debug it.
So what does this all mean for developers navigating this?
It creates a massive divide in the workforce. You'll have disciplined engineers who use loops to multiply their output, but only inside architectures they deeply understand. They maintain strict oversight.
And the other side?
Lazy engineers, they'll use loops to avoid understanding anything. They'll just stack feature on feature until the comprehension debt collapses the whole system.
Which is exactly why governance can't be an afterthought. You can't have junior devs spinning up sub-agents on personal laptops with hard-coded passwords.
No, multiply that across a company, and you have invisible robot processes holding live credentials with no audit trail. You need mature, secure, centralized cloud infrastructure.
So to distill all this down for you listening, the fundamental mindset shift is that the unit of skill is no longer the prompt, it's the loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are shifting from the driver steering the car to the architect building the self-driving engine.
Yeah.
So stop obsessing over how to write a better prompt. Start asking, what business end state can I describe so clearly that a machine can verify it entirely on its own?
That's a great takeaway.
Mm.
But it does leave me with one final lingering thought that builds on all this. We are building these intricate harnesses to contain the AI. We're separating loops into makers and checkers. Everything is getting more autonomous.
Right.
How long until we just ask a loop to design its own ratchet? How long until we ask the AI to analyze its own failure logs, improve its own padded room, and write its own rules?
Oh, wow.
In a world where these stochastic machines learn to optimize the stochastic machines, What exactly will the human architect's job description even look like 10 years from now? Are we still going to be drawing it all?
That really is the existential question at the bottom of all this.
Something to mull over while your loops are busy working for you? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.